When the ball is in the goal, it's not Shearer nor Cole, it's Amari. And this is Blue Monday. Welcome to the Blue Monday podcast covering Ipswich Town up or down since 2015. This is a live match reaction show looking back at last night's game at Southampton. And I'm joined by two of my esteemed colleagues. It's Craig Finbow, who was watching in the warm and dry at home in Essex, and Joe Fairs, who's had a real day of it today. Joe, talk us through the logistics for your day yesterday and today.
Well, getting down there we got stuck at Dartford on the way down there, so it was a slow day down there, and then obviously we had the issues with the M3 and the M25 and the A12 on the way back. So I got in at sort of just after 2 o'clock in the morning, and then my wife was working in London today, so it was handed over to me for school runs, making sure they had everything, picking them up, taking them to football clubs, standing in the rain, getting soaked for an hour, and now I just want to go to bed, but I couldn't resist talking about last night's game for another hour with these guys.
And Craig, I imagine you're pretty jealous, maybe not of Joe's evening on the A12, but the game before it, or the game in between it.
Yeah, a little bit, but you've got to fight. Pick your battles wisely, Mikey. You're in your fledgling career as a married man. I've got a few years under my belt. I've got the tickets for Huddersfield and train tickets for Bristol in my pocket, so I can't be pushing things too much. But no, I had a very relaxing day. Yeah, nice solid night's sleep, and I've got children old enough to look after themselves and get themselves out the door at 7:30 in the morning. So yeah, happy days.
Brilliant stuff. This is obviously a live show, so please get your questions in. Put a queue before them, and I'll get through as many as I can later on in the show. Thanks to everyone that's joined us already and said hello. We've got loads of you in the chat. And speaking of live shows, you can join us in the flesh on October the 7th for our live show after the Preston game. Craig, it's only £10 a ticket. All of the details are in the YouTube description and our website, bluemondayitfc.co.uk. Can you believe it's only £10 a ticket to watch and listen to us?
Well, absolutely not. And also, it's even cheaper if you're a Telegram member, Mikey. Don't forget, there's a special discount if you're that way inclined. And yes, you may even get another Who Wants to Be a Millionaire level type game show going on at the live show this year as well. So yeah, it's worth every single penny.
Fabulous. And the star guest, it's not you, Craig. The other star guest is going to be announced on Sunday's Flagship Show, apparently. So that's something to watch out for. But let's get into this Southampton game, shall we? I know Joe's desperate to get to bed, so let's talk about the team news first of all. There was quite a few changes, wasn't there, Craig, from that team that impressively won at Sheffield Wednesday. One of them, of course, there was no choice about Leif Davis not starting, but the other ones, were there any surprises there for you, or could you see Kieran McKenna's thinking?
Potentially, well, yeah. I suppose the surprise was Hutchinson coming in for Broadhead, and also Taylor in for Luonga. I did wonder at the weekend whether that particular centre midfield change may happen. One, by virtue of there being games so close to each other, but also just given Southampton's propensity to not bother tracking their runners into their own box, that Taylor may be able to play that role that he played for Peterborough in terms of getting forward and breaking into the box and getting on the end of things. So I wasn't potentially too surprised by that one. And the Hutchinson one as well, as it transpired, it was a masterstroke. But I do wonder whether that was also linked to Davis not being around, in that Hutchinson would then provide the width in front of Williams, if you know what I mean. So Williams wouldn't be going forward and breaking down the wing and slinging things in with his left foot. He'll be cutting inside. So in front of him, there needs to be that width. And whether that swayed it into Hutchinson's favour in terms of his natural width, giving us that width further up the pitch on the left.
Just to remind everyone of that starting 11, this graphic has nicely covered up Craig here. So it's Hladky in goal, Clark right back, Wolfenden and Burgess centre back, Brandon Williams, as you mentioned, came in at left back. Morsey was joined by Jack Taylor in midfield. And then it was Burns on the right, Chaplin in the number 10, Hutchinson off the left, and Hurst through the middle. A little bit disappointed not to see Broadhead, Joe, or can you kind of see the thought process there? What were the injuries that he suffered this time a year ago?
Yeah, and I think the point Craig made is a good one with regard to sort of having someone playing from sort of in to out rather than out to in out there as well to keep the pitch wide. But I think he's a player that he has not got a brilliant injury record, Nathan Broadhead, has he? And whilst he has played basically every game since he came here, it took him a while to settle in. But he was the one when we played the sort of Friday, Monday, and the Easter Monday Mr. Cheltenham game, wasn't he? So I imagine he is a player that we do manage carefully. And even when you look at games, he sort of, once you get into the second half games, he does sometimes just start to disappear out of them. So I just don't think he's got that same level of fitness as the likes of Burns and Chaplin do. So he's probably the obvious one that drops out. And you've, like I say, he's such a good player. You have to protect him. And he showed it when he came on, how good a player he is as well.
Absolutely. And let's just talk about the Southampton team. Flynn Downs was injured, Joe. Bit of a shame not to see him, but in some ways, but maybe not in others. Quite an attacking looking lineup, wasn't it? Aribo was playing central midfield. I always thought that he was an attacking player, and he was the one that replaced Downs in that midfield.
Yeah, and he was playing really deep, wasn't he? And Armstrong is he doesn't play where it shows him there, but he was almost playing as a number 8, really, wasn't he? Rather than a, I think he looked like a 10 when I last saw him play, as opposed to the 9 previously. But he was playing really deep in there, and it's a midfield that doesn't protect quite an inexperienced back line very well, with regards to taking the ball off them and giving them some protection when it breaks. It's quite, I know, it looks like 3 number 8s in there almost to me. Yeah,
so just to remind people, it was Bazunu in goal, Walker-Peters, Charles, Harwood-Bellis and Manning at the back. And then, Aribo and Smallbone with Armstrong probably playing in front of them. He sort of had a free roll, really, didn't he? And then Adozie on the right, of course, Fraser, formerly of this parish, on the left, and Che Adams, who also dropped deep quite a lot as well at times, playing through the middle. But still a dangerous Southampton team, that one. What were your expectations going into the game, Craig, or did you not really have any?
Well, I think it's along similar lines to the Leeds game, really, in that, and I think, Joe spoke about it at the weekend, that he was very confident that if it came to a straight shootout between coaches, we'd come out on top by virtue of having a better manager in charge with a better tactical plan. However, if you look through their team, as you say, Mikey, there's players who cost, there's centre-halves who cost 12 million quid in their team, let alone the players further up the pitch. And it only does take 1 or 2 of those to sprinkle a bit of magic and do what they're supposed to be doing in the Premier League last year to open us up, by virtue of just being better players in the right place at the right time. You see what I mean? So it wouldn't take too much to do that. So that's the only fear at the back of your head, is you think, we're going to be set up right, we're going to be attacking the right way, we're going to be solid at the back, but it does just take a little bit of magic from one of those players should it happen. You wouldn't think that Martin's tactics would outdo us, but it would just be maybe an individual bit of brilliance. I must say, Ryan Fraser looked very old.
Just a couple of questions.
Did you notice that, mate? You look very old man, Ryan Fraser.
He did.
3 years. 3 years in the north, mate, tends to age you somewhat, I think.
Oh, okay. I wasn't going to go there, but I was going to more go down the line of how much he enjoys eating pizza. And if anyone read the Matchday programme last night, he's got a bit of an obsession with Taylor Swift as well. Michael Warner thinks that Taylor was maybe given a run out in case Morsey gets his 5th yellow card, just getting some minutes into his legs. I suppose that does make sense, but remember that when Morsey is on that disciplinary tightrope, he seems to find a way not to get booked in games.
I think this is quite a long one to walk at the moment. I don't think he'll be not getting booked until December.
No. Maybe he'll time it just right instead. Rob Hughes says he thinks Jackson might have played in Broadhead's place had he been fit. Potentially, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were speaking about Jackson, weren't they, as coming in with the pace and the break. But in the end, the way the game set up wasn't how I expected it to go, because I thought we'd be looking to sort of really sit deep and try and hit them on a counter, draw them in, but that wasn't really how it went in the end.
Yeah, it was more. As it turned out, it was more a game for Hutchinson. Sorry, Hutchinson to have the ball at his feet and run at people, wasn't it? Rather than knocking it behind and have someone like Jackson running into space.
And just getting into the game, pretty even start. The conditions were pretty awful, weren't they, Joe? Wet and windy, blustery. Neither team really got a grip on the game, but we got a corner down our right. Amari Hutchinson whips it in, and on 7 minutes, the ball's in the back of the net, but the ref has already blown his whistle basically before it hits the net. Wasn't too many complaints from our players. Craig, you were watching this on telly, so you probably got a slightly better view of this than us, but what do you think the ref saw there?
Not a clue. No idea whatsoever. No, I didn't. I watched the replays back today. I watched the match highlights and the longer extended bits and pieces today, and I don't think our commentators knew. Westlake and Wheeler, they couldn't see anything, and you could watch it back 2 or 3 times. There just doesn't seem to be. No one's bundled over. No one seems to have their shirt pulled. There just doesn't seem to be anything. And as you say, we didn't complain too much, but as I was saying before we started, whether that's by virtue of us just needing to get back into position to stop the Southampton attack, you haven't got time to harangue the referee anymore because we're getting back into position. So maybe why we didn't complain too much. But no, I didn't see anything wrong with it at all.
Yeah, a bit of a weird one. Apparently, the commentators on BBC Radio Solent couldn't find a reason for that goal to be ruled out. Which probably tells its own story. Southampton were looking to play slowly and purposefully from the back. Even saw Russell Martin sprint to the front of his technical box to stop a quick counter attack and trying to get rid of the chaos in the game, which was strange to watch from a home team, but that seems to be the way that he does things. We're presented with a few half chances from them playing out from the back, and on the half-hour mark, Joe, they're made to pay for some of their cumbersome play, aren't they?
Yeah, and this is probably the first time we really catch them playing out from the back, isn't it? And it's Charles tries to drive forward with the ball, but he just dilly-dallies onto it a little bit, doesn't he? And he just sort of has a look round and doesn't see Hutchinson. Hutchinson flies in there and puts a great tackle in, and not just that, bounces back up off the floor straight away. And Chaplin gets the ball, picks it up and rolls it, and I think Hurst does well to get out of the way of it, because it looks like the ball, to me, at first looked like it was to Hurst where we were in the away end, but it goes through to Hutchinson and he just sort of does a sliding finish, and it's a perfect finish. It's in off the post. The keeper's got no chance, and he follows up a Premier League quality goal with a Premier League quality celebration with a superb sort of cartwheel and flip.
Absolutely. Straight out of your playbook from the cricket fields of Essex, wasn't it, Craig, that celebration?
Yeah, very much so. Once I've managed to scratch around for 2 or 3 runs, I'm very often seen somersaulting around the outfields of North Essex and South Suffolk, mate, yes.
Wonderful. After yet more superb defending from the front, we come incredibly close to scoring a second goal 5 minutes later. A little bit of deja vu here from the Sunderland game early on in the season. Southampton not learning their lesson. Chaplin dinking it onto the crossbar, Craig, and then it falls to Hurst just as it did at Sunderland. And it looks like this time he gets the shot right, but somehow it's deflected wide.
Yeah, that's right. And as Joe said, and as was proven in the Leicester game on Friday, they just don't seem to learn their lesson, do they? It's absolutely bizarre. Obviously, they're just drilled in to keep doing it. But I thought the Southampton fans were relatively patient, all things considered, having seen their team ship goals on Friday and then to a League One team last year had the same thing, carbon copy, happening all over again in front of their eyes. There were a smattering of boos, but I'd be losing my rag if we just kept trying to do the same thing, keep getting caught out. But this time it's Taylor, actually, isn't it? Nicks it off Aruba in midfield and then slips it through to Chaplin. And yeah, it's a lovely little dink from Chaplin. Just unfortunate it wasn't 6 inches lower. I think Hurst does exactly what he needs to do, but it's just a good block by the defender. It skews wide.
And at this stage of the game, it really felt like it was ours for the taking there, because I know Russell Martin spoke about it in the post-match conference about how they react badly to when they make mistakes, and it was that way against Leicester, that way against Sunderland, and it's just when they go one down, they just totally panic. And they'd been playing out from the back fine. They'd probably been marginally the better side up until our goal, but from that point until half time, it was 15 minutes of just utter carnage for them defensively. They were just so poor at that point, and it really felt like we needed to try and make them pay with a second goal before half time. And we had that one. We had the chance Burns had is from them playing out from the back, and it was just, I don't know, it was just incredible just to be in the stadium and see it. And it was just, you could just see what's happening. You could see how rattled they were. And even at the start of the second half, there's like a couple of times where Harwood Bellis just gives the ball away, and then he was like, his arms were up and he was flapping about, and the game was still in play at this point, and he was just like turning away from the ball, getting so angry about giving the ball away until they shifted him out of position. I think they'd moved Charles forward at that point, but it was just, I don't know, it's just incredible to see. They did get out of that funk and did improve from that point onwards, but it was just mad. And one mistake was compounded by another, and so we could have just totally sewn that game up in that period.
But it puts a lot of onus, Joe, doesn't it, on two centre halves who are 19 and 21 years old, however old they are. It's not as if they're.
And that Charles is mainly been a central midfielder through most of his youth career as well.
Yeah, it was good to see, wasn't it, Joe? Were you maybe a little bit disappointed at half time that we were only one goal up? Did he worry that Southampton couldn't be as poor in the second half?
Well, I think so, because you see their squad, and for all the goals they've conceded, which is a lot, they have got goals in them in every game, and they have scored in nearly every game, scored quite a few goals. So it's not like they've conceded 17 and scored 4. They've got a lot of goals as well, and with the players they've got, they're always going to be dangerous. And it did feel a little bit of a missed opportunity there to really put what is on paper one of the toughest game of the season. There seemed a real opportunity to put that to bed while they were like rabbits in headlights, and we just didn't take advantage of that.
But generally a really good away performance in that first half. Southampton, as expected, came out pretty quickly at the start of the second half. Had perhaps a few of us fearing the worst. Hladky makes a superb stop with his face early in the second half. I think it was Che Adams, that one. He got through. Taylor, Williams and Clark. I'm going to shout out to all three of these for some booming tackles as Southampton looked to hit us on the break, because there was some quite quick transitions in that game, but we always managed to just get the tackle in, didn't we, Craig? And that definitely uplifted the home fans, the away fans as well. Yeah,
well, there was a crunching one, wasn't there, from Williams on Adams in the first half that he got his yellow card for. But then, as you say, in the second half, Clark was playing like a man possessed yesterday. I think it may have been Jules mentioned in the comments that he looked like he got his yard of pace back, which he did. He looked back to his tail end of last season self, didn't he? In terms of his aggression and his pace. I can't think who it was on, but in the second half he ran back and he was behind the guy running back towards our goal and managed to hook his foot around and clear it. So both him and Williams are two pretty terrier-like fullbacks, aren't they? They're not scared of getting stuck in, those two.
Definitely not. Joe, do you think Clark maybe benefited from just having quite an obvious task on his hands? Not an easy one, defending 1-on-1 against Ryan Fraser, but it was very much stay wide, stay tight to him, and he stuck to that task and did really well. Do you think maybe there being less emphasis on him getting forward attacking wise in that first half maybe helped him a little bit?
Yeah, I think it definitely did help him in that side, but we seem to have a very different game plan to what we've had in other games this season. It almost felt like McKenna was like, we're just going to make sure we stay in a good defensive shape the whole game, press them high when they try and play it from the back, but as soon as they beat the press, you just drop back, get into shape. And we effectively were almost waiting for them to make mistakes to try and pounce on those to attack, as opposed to trying to turn it into a sort of basketball style match like we had against Leeds a few weeks back. It was almost like we're just going to trust ourselves that we're going to be better than you, and you're going to make a mistake. We're going to defend well, and you're going to make a mistake in this game. And I think Clark definitely benefited from that, where he was more of an orthodox right back, really, wasn't he? As opposed to a right centre back who is also a right wing back and getting so high up the pitch the other side. It was much more 4-2-3-1 than it has been in recent weeks.
A little bit more rigid, wasn't it? Masluongo came on for Taylor, and we recaptured some control in midfield. Just a quick question on Taylor there, Craig. What do you think of his debut? There was some really good bits, some fantastic tackles, as I mentioned, some nice clipped passes, but we were a little bit sloppy in possession in central midfield last night, I thought, at times.
Yeah, we were. And in the first 20 minutes, even Morsey was relatively sloppy on the ball. But I think by virtue of having Taylor in it, I just got sort of echoes of when he was playing with Cameron Humphreys and just maybe having to do a little bit of his work as well as his own work. And then maybe that had a little bit of a knock-on effect on his game. But as Joe said there, it looked that our two centre midfielders were playing a lot deeper, which obviously isn't really Taylor's game. I do just still wonder whether he's struggling from a technical perspective. He doesn't quite look up to technically the Championship just yet. But obviously, we've got no reason at all to suggest that the coaching he's receiving every day won't improve that many times over. But as you rightly say, Mikey, once Luongo did come onto the pitch, it just settled things down and we got a greater foothold in the game. And obviously Morsey's got his mate back that he can rely on to do the job next to him.
Absolutely. And pretty soon after he came on, Connor Chaplin has a volleyed effort saved us after some good wing play from Burns. I thought Burns was his final ball wasn't great at times last night, but I thought that he was always a threat, just like the Leeds game earlier this season. It's pretty end to end at this stage. We eventually make a double sub on the 70th minute. Williams and Hurst, who were both absolutely dead on their feet, weren't they, Joe? Replaced by Don Ball and Dane Scarlett. Don Ball went across to right back. Harry Clark went over to left back. And I think they immediately, Southampton swapped their wide forwards over as well to try and get the nippy winger that came on. I can't remember his name, 1-on-1 against Don Ball. But what did you make of the decision to bring on Scarlett, Joe, rather than Ladapo?
I think it was probably the right choice in that the game was still quite stretched at this point, wasn't it? And for all Ladapo's qualities, and which he's shown in recent weeks, he is better when the game is sort of more compact and you're trying to play the ball into him into the box. He's not a brilliant presser of the ball, especially when he hasn't got sort of backup from the midfield. I know that's a thankless task, but Scarlett did seem to work sort of the wider area of the pitches more and get about a bit more than what Ladapo would have expected to do in that. And I think it was good to give him his debut, good to get him in there because hopefully he's going to be a big part of the season.
Absolutely. I thought he showed some pretty good touches as well. Bluey says he would have saved Dane for the Cup or Blackburn. Is Freddie going to be happy? Sensitive one. I don't know if we have to worry too much about that, do we, Craig?
I don't think so. No, I think Ladapo knows the situation. I think it was just a point, as Joe's saying there, it probably just did need to carry on that press from the front. And as Joe said, it probably isn't Ladapo's game, even for 25 minutes, whatever it happened to be. But it would be nice to see. I think Scarlett probably will play in that Wolves game, potentially from the start as well. It'd be nice to see him from the start and see what he can do, just to put some pressure on Hurst from a starting perspective.
I think there's half a chance we might see Ladapo and Scarlett from the start in that game, but we'll see. Won't be a lot can change between now and then. Wolfenden and Burgess, I'm going to shout them out for this part of the match. They were absolutely imperious, just clearing everything. Wolfenden especially was like a magnet to the ball last night, and as always, chilled in possession as well. Hutchinson and Chaplin are replaced by Harness and Broadhead. Joe's already mentioned it. Broadhead just comes on and the game just looks easy for him, doesn't it? Harness fails to make the most of a chance on the counter. That looked like quite a good chance that Harness had there, but he went to take the shot quite early with his right foot when it was on his left. But to be honest, Joe, it was pretty nerve-wracking, that 7 minutes of injury time. Can't lie, but we sort of held them at arm's length, didn't we?
Yeah, and I think other than that very early chance in the second half that Adams had where it hit Hladky's face, they didn't really create any chance of note, did they? There was a couple of balls across the box and a couple of times where had they got sort of a slightly better touch, they might have got a shot away, but it's not like I say, did Hladky make there was a save from Manning, but that was a fairly regulation save, wasn't it? It was a 25-yard
Routine.
shot, which was, I don't know if that had gone in, you'd have been asking big questions over him. No, I think we just got our shape so right defensively, and also it's not just that when we made the changes, we were able to lose the players who were maybe had their race run that night. And so I think big shout out, and as he's been mentioned about Harry Clark for that performance yesterday. Like when you see there's sort of been these question marks over his fitness and the amount of running he put in last night, and then he was a player that had to go across the left because we just didn't have another option to go there when Williams was sort of had been dead on his feet for about 10 minutes. And I think Harry Clark and Wes Burns, those two, the amount of effort those two put in the wide positions was incredible, and that's sort of not taking anything away from Wolfie and Burgess at the back, who were superb, but just that energy to keep going, knowing that we haven't got the subs, that they're not going to be able to be the ones that are withdrawn from the game to sort of leave it from there. No, that they really stood out. But yeah, I say we were relatively untroubled, weren't we, through the whole game, even before we scored to after we scored. You look at the things like the XG count, and I think it was mentioned in the Telegram this morning from the Sheffield Wednesday game and yesterday's game, where we were 1-0 up for over half these games. We conceded a total XG of 0.81. No big chances conceded in that time. It's pretty, like I say, it's pretty impressive to go away from home and do that back to back, isn't it?
Very impressive indeed, Craig. I know you weren't there last night, but where does this away performance rank among the best under Kieran McKenna? It felt pretty special.
Yeah, well, I suppose it sort of. I just wonder, from a belief perspective, from a supporter's perspective, and also from a player's perspective. You know, you can probably expect, having got the momentum from last season up to the international break, to sort of see, I don't know, adrenaline and momentum seeing us through to that point. But we've had the break. Everyone's had a chance to reevaluate themselves, and opposition have had a chance to see how we play. Yet, following on from that, we've now gone 2 away games, and this is the second away game in 4 days to 2, which are tricky places to go. And as Joe said, we've come away with 2 clean sheets, and not just that, as Joe, and I think it was Jack in the Telegram, just to give him a shout out, pointed out no big chances and an XG of less than 1 across both games. You know, and I just think that you're starting to see the belief in the players as well, that, oh, hang on a second, you know, we trod all over everyone for the last 2 months, 3 months of last season, whatever it happens to be. Now we've sort of got the first half a dozen games out of the way, or 4 or 5 games out of the way before the international break. We're going again now, and it's still working. And Westlake made a point on the commentary saying that he can see that these guys now just completely trust everything that McKenna tells them. You know, they will do whatever he tells them because they know damn well that what he's telling them is currently exactly the right thing to do.
And it's not just that. I think Mick Mills making some points on Radio Suffolk that I managed to tune into a little bit on the way back, but effectively saying that, like I said, we've gone to Southampton, which is obviously one of the toughest places to go this season. We haven't got Christian Walton, we haven't got Leif Davis, we didn't have Nathan Broadhead in the side, and it was a real. I'm not saying it was a rotator team, but it was a team where you've made sort of maybe some changes that you maybe wouldn't have liked to have made if it was a cup final. You wouldn't have played that team because of the sort of scheduling that we've had to. And not just that, you've used that whole bench. You've used 5 players off that bench, and they've all come in, and you're sort of really down in the sort of players 18, 19, 20 in the squad, and they're all still contributing. They're all still stepping in, and just the levels aren't dropping at all when you take those out. Everyone knows their role so well. The team is, like I said, that was a different game plan to what we played with all season. And to go out there off the back of what probably one training session, get that game plan into the team, that to have a few different players, have 5 subs come on during the game and be able to continue it, I think it shows what a special manager and squad we've got at the moment.
Absolutely. Rob Hughes certainly agrees. He said both players and fans have such faith in McKenna's judgment right now that he could play Chappers in goal and we'd all just nod along. It's a brilliant feeling to have, isn't it? And just a world away from where we have been in the not too distant past.
Yeah.
Keep your questions coming in. Julian Took says his mum's still in love with Mick Mills. I think a lot of people across Suffolk are still in love with Mick Mills, aren't they? Let's look at the other results from Tuesday night. Obviously, a lot of listeners might be listening to this after Wednesday night's matches have happened, but we'll run through them anyway. The ones that we do know
Norwich
about.
lost 4-0.
Would be nice, although that knocks us out of the top 2, doesn't it, Craig? Sheffield Wednesday were leading for a lot of that match against Middlesbrough, ended up 1-1. Bit of a relegation encounter, that one. Bristol City, impressive 4-1 win at home against Plymouth.
Plymouth made
QPR
7
got
changes.
Injury time equaliser. Yeah, Plymouth made 7 changes, yeah. Interesting one, that. With, what was it, 3,500 visiting fans. Probably wasn't too popular, that decision. Cardiff seems to be on the up since we beat them. A 3-2 win against Coventry. And Preston just absolutely flying, aren't they? Another 2-1 win. They're not going to be the Plymouth this season, are they? Where we say they can't keep doing this.
Yeah, that's what Steve's just put in the chat, actually, asking that exact same question.
Well, hopefully we're the Plymouth. We're the Plymouth this season.
Yeah, would be nice, wouldn't it? Although we won't complain too much if we're not spoken about constantly. Let's have a quick look at that league table as well. How things stood after Southampton nil Ipswich won. So, yeah, Preston, top of the league, still unbeaten, won the last 5. We're just 1 point behind them, 18 points from 7 matches. Do we know, or does anyone know in the chat what the average points that we need per game is to probably make the playoffs? It's something like 1.2, isn't it, Jay?
It wouldn't be quite that low. It'd be what? If you said like 55 more points needed over the last 39 games.
Yeah, forgive me if it wasn't Chris, but
1.4 points per game.
Yeah, someone in the Telegram was saying that it needs to. Was it Telegram saying that it needs to be basically top 10 form now to potentially see us in the top 6? Having got off to the start we've got off to. Not that I'm saying we should go aim for top 10 form now.
Southampton down in 11th after 3 straight defeats and set to end this match week in the bottom half. Blackburn, they could end tonight in the top 6. There's not really much point in me talking about that, is there? Because these matches are currently ongoing. I'm sure people will keep us up to date over the next few minutes as we stay on air. If you could get your questions in to help us along, help drive this conversation. I've got a few that I've starred here for you, Joe. Hutchinson last night reminded me of Giovanni Dos Santos from Tim Cass, and potential to be the best loan player since then. Could be one of the most exciting to watch, potentially.
And also, he's coming into a team which is so well structured and with a manager who is so good, effectively, that if he's got 2/3 of the ability of Dos Santos, then he's probably going to be as good as him this season, because it's just such an easy role to come into, isn't it? When everything is functioning so well around it. And it was really interesting listening to McKenna's post-match press conference talking about Hutchinson, saying how when he spoke to him over the summer, he made a massive thing about how he thinks he could be one of the best players of his age in the world, he was saying, with regards to off the ball quality as a winger. And I guess this is interesting for a player who was sort of picked up by the F2 freestylers when he was about 10 years old and focused on YouTube videos as this skills player, that a manager's now said, I can turn you into a good defensive player to go alongside that. And ultimately, if he wants to make it at the very top, which I'm sure he does, and I'm sure he's got every opportunity and chance to do so, then these are the things he needs to develop on this loan spell. And like I say, every game he's played, he's got better, and he really seems to be learning from what he's been told. Because the first couple of games, it's almost like a little bit lightweight, sort of pushed down and stopping and expecting the ref to give him something, and it's just picked up. And from each game, it's just got better and better. And I don't know how high his ceiling will be this season for us, and I'm sure he'll have his dips and form in his first year of senior football. But he does really look like we could have a special player here for this season.
And also what it shows is that the parent club are going to get a much more rounded player back from us by virtue of the coaching that they're receiving, in a year's time. Not saying for 1 second that Chelsea are going to even contemplate using him at all, but it sort of shows the wider footballing world that you can trust Ipswich and McKenna to nurture your kids and get the best out of them, and it could be a very lucrative two-way relationship with various clubs in the Premier League. Should we get to, for example, January and need to get some proper high-level loans in, there's evidence is there that we can, or McKenna can turn these players into even better players.
There is a question on that from Norman Greenwald. Given how bloated Chelsea's squad is there a chance that we sign Hutchinson permanently? He's going to be some player.
I think they paid $5 million for him to get him from Arsenal last year. So whilst he isn't as high profile as some of their other signings, he was still a massive fee even then last year. So you're looking at a player that they're going to want to quadruple their money on, aren't they? As a minimum. So yeah, if we get promoted, there's every chance we could go back into him. But these, like I say, these players are a long way off, and it's not the case nowadays where you bring players in on loan and then you get promoted and you sign them. They're just too difficult deals to do because the fees are so high. You look at sort of Cameron Archer at Middlesbrough, excellent last season. He's gone to 18 million to Sheffield United this season, and things like that. It's crazy money.
Absolutely, but yeah, probably more Giovanni Dos Santos than Keenan Bennett from what we've seen so far. Alex Hare, the question on one of our other new signings: how is Taylor going to fit into the side in an 8 position without losing the better qualities he has when in his typical 10 position?
Yeah, I don't know really. Well, he's not going to currently dislodge the two that are there, is he? So he's going to have plenty of time and plenty of coaching, as I said before.
No.
If the potential is there, it will be found and it will be brought out of him to play that role. And it may be that over the course of the season, it's a long old slog of a season, that he will be needed to play in the 10 role. Maybe that Chaplin or Broadhead gets injured and he has to move further forward. But we saw in the League Cup game a couple of weeks ago, he was getting into the box, breaking into the box, scoring goals. So he's already got that string to his bow, and that is potentially one of the more difficult skills to teach, isn't it? Is the timing of runs and breaking into the box to get on the end of things as a central midfielder. So I'd just like to see his technical ability just polished a little bit to play that continuation role, if you see what I mean, just to keep things turning over in a number 8 position.
Yeah, not an easy game to come into, that one. The game was played at high tempo, wasn't it?
That was almost David Brent's business card there, I thought, with regards to potentially, if it's in you, I'll find it.
You'll never work for a manager like me.
I personally don't think that he's played a lot in that deeper role. So whilst I thought he was good sort of at destroying, getting on the ball, nicking it, pressing it there, I think he was struggling with regards to receiving the ball sort of quite close to his own goal, and having more of the pitch in front of him and having bodies snapping around him as opposed to picking it up when you're sort of moving through the thirds. And I think that's where he got caught a couple of times, wasn't it? So it's just, how do you improve that without the match experience, which I guess will come.
Indeed. We had a bit of a discussion on Dane Scarlett earlier, and I think this is your chauffeur, isn't it? Isn't it, Joe? Gary Haseman?
It is Gary, the excellent Gary.
Says he's not sure Dane can play in the Cup, thinks he came on for Spurs in the last round.
Yeah, that rings a bell, actually. Yeah, Gary. Yeah. So, Gary, let us know how much Joe tips you for letting him drink in your car on the way to and from games. Probably seems a bit of a piss take to me.
And don't you have another question for Gary as well, Craig?
I don't know. Do I?
Yeah, I thought you were going to ask him if he picks up in Brighton.
Ah, yes. Actually, yeah. Next time you're heading down the A12, Gary, if you want to just venture off down the A120 towards Brightlingsea, you can come and pick me up, and I can drink in the back of your car as Joe can drink in the front.
Lovely stuff. Ben Cook, best news of the night was Leaf's injury not serious. That is good news, isn't it, Joe?
Yeah, fantastic.
Could we see him on Saturday against Blackburn?
I don't know. McKenna didn't seem to rule it out, did he? I guess whether you just leave him one more game out and just.
But Williams took a bang, didn't he?
So the Huddersfield game, yeah. But it's hard with Williams because he's so sort of up and down, isn't he? That you couldn't tell whether he's sort of just over egging it or just sort of making it look bad to try and sort of use up a bit of time. Because there was times when he looked like he was quite bad, and dead on his feet, and then he'd pull this like 40-yard sprint out at full pace, and then he'd sort of be on his haunches again. So I don't know. It's difficult to know the true fitness of anyone out there, isn't it?
To be fair, when I watched, and you may be able to see it on the videos that have come out today in terms of the celebrations after the match, Davis was still limping when he was like joining the rest of the team, applauding the crowd, and he did still look, to my eyes, untrained eyes, should I hasten to add, that he was walking with a bit of a limp.
Okay, interesting. Maybe it will be Harry Clark that goes across and plays right back again then. A commented on something earlier on. I completely forgot about this, actually. I was going to comment on how good Ladke was last night, and I was thinking during the game, would we be able to play like this with Walton in goal? Because Ladke's distribution is just so good. He looks so composed at the moment. But there was that one pass that he basically kicked it straight at Che Adams, I think, and it just basically went through him somehow. And he'd just taken him on as well.
It's just like, after the crowd had given it a hooray, and then it's like, oof.
He bent it round him, didn't he?
Yeah.
He just bent it round him.
It's sort of about, I think if Adams was alert and alive, he could have been in trouble on that one.
But that's an interesting point though, Mikey, about, is Ladke's maybe overconfidence on the ball just settling us down and allowing us to play as we are from the back? It's a really interesting point, actually. And as has been the conversation for the last 2 or 3 weeks, is how quickly and easily will Walton come back into the team. I think Joe said at the weekend he's still our number one, which he is. But what it does do, it just takes a hell of a lot of pressure off rushing him back. We don't have to worry about rushing him back into the team. He can be fully fit now, can't he? Before we even contemplate it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll see him against Wolves. Who knows? Steve says it's 1.38 points per game to get us to 72 points at game 46. Still a long way off, isn't it? But yeah, these are good times at the moment. Steel Panther says Gary Lineker and Alan Shearer have praised Kieran McKenna because they believe that he can get Ipswich promoted into the Premier League. That was an exciting one, wasn't it? Hearing Ipswich Town spoken about in a very popular podcast. Although, do you feel a little bit protective over Kieran McKenna, Joe? Would you rather they weren't talking about him?
It's unavoidable now because he is getting so much right in every facet of his job, isn't it? That it's you can't hide him in plain sight, can you? He is, every boardroom in the country will know what McKenna's doing here, and it's just I think we're in quite a fortunate position because obviously you can tell he loves it here. He's onto a very good thing, and that maybe the level of team that he'd probably leave us for probably wouldn't come to a manager from the Championship, if that makes sense. So I think we're probably in quite a fortunate position that obviously the big six wouldn't come down this far, but even when you look at maybe like a West Ham or an Aston Villa or a team of that sort of standing, and I don't think they'd be looking to recruit a manager from the Championship. So I think we'd probably be just about okay for at least this season and hopefully longer, because he's a very, very special manager, isn't he?
Indeed. A asks, should Amari replace Burns on Saturday? Takes the ball past Venice for fun and can score a goal. I actually expect, despite that brilliant performance, Hutchinson to start from the bench on Saturday. What say you, Craig?
Yeah, potentially as well. Now Broadhead's had 20 or so, quarter of an hour, 20 minutes last night, just to keep him ticking over. But I wouldn't be surprised to see us go back to Luongo centre midfield, basically back to what as close to what we know to be our starting 11 again come Saturday, because there won't be a game on Tuesday for a lot of them, will there? They'll have a week off from the Wolves game. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Hutchinson is back on the bench, back for Broadhead to be starting.
Okay, can have a look through some of these other comments. Got one here from Kieran McKenna, says, please like if you're watching this on YouTube. Kieran McKenna says to like this video if you're watching on YouTube. Joe Cook, is Don Ball's role now just to be a utility player? I mean, maybe it is, Joe, but he's doing a pretty good job at it, isn't he, so far?
Yeah, I think it probably is, because when you look at the central midfield options, he hasn't really had a go in central midfield all season, has he? you sit there and you see that we've obviously got Cameron Humphreys, Jack Taylor, Lee Evans, who can play in that role, but he's obviously a very valuable squad member. He's a good character around the squad, and it's one of those things. He's going to be on the bench in every game this season at the very least. He's going to be in every match day squad this season that he's fit for, because he does just offer you a number of options. And I say he's doing well. He did well when he came on last night in what was an easy game to come into in a bad position. They brought that Sulemana on, was it the guy that had been sent off on Friday, who was just absolutely rapid, and he sort of handled him all right. I think there was maybe a little bit of luck with an offside call, where had it not been offside, which it was offside, he might have been in a bit of trouble.
Yeah,
he looked to be in a lot of trouble. I don't know about a bit of trouble. He couldn't grab hold of him, let alone kick him. Poor boy.
That was one thing I found quite interesting last night that played into our hands massively. The ref just did not give yellow cards for professional fouls on the halfway line. The amount of times we pulled players back or took players' legs away. Amari Hutchinson has wiped their player out a couple of times, and I think he went off without even getting booked.
Yeah, Hutchinson, I think at one point, he ended up with like 6 fouls and not a yellow card. And after the second one, I sort of said to him, "Oh, he's going to get booked the next time he does a foul."
Yeah.
That's like he's going to get booked the next one. And then Williams then wiped out Adams. Just like, okay, Williams has now taken the card that Hutchinson was due to get, and he just didn't get it. But no, the ref was a bit lenient.
Matt Phillips, do we expect Axel Tuanzebe to come into the team once he's up to speed? Surely you can't drop Burgess, Craig.
Well, I don't know. I can't imagine he will. But yeah, just on the Burgess point, I think he was, again, last night. You mentioned it earlier, Mikey. He was colossal last night again. And as we were chatting about in the Telegram group, currently, very early in the season, he's got to be player of the season so far, hasn't he? In terms of the step up and what realistic and turns out wrongly at the moment, we all thought he may struggle given the step up in quality. He has just taken his performances up to yet another level. We all sort of assumed that Luke Wolfenden would do it, Joe more than most, but I thought, the level of Burgess has come at an absolute bonus to everyone, I'd have thought. And fair play to the guys. He's really, really reveling in that role, and he's doing the dirty stuff. Disrespectful to headering and kicking it and tackling people, but both him and Wolfenden were doing that last night when they thrown themselves in the way of things. But he's really, really stepped up his game this season, and I can't imagine Tuanzebe's going to come straight into the team on the back of it for that reason.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, but hopefully we'll get to see Tuanzebe. That's another one for the Wolves game. That's the beauty of still being in the Carabao Cup, and why I'd quite like us to go as far as we can in that one. Ashley Walker's observation: defenders taking goal kicks last night to avoid another Hladky booking.
I think it's just something we've done. We've done pretty generally as it is, but I think they just like to mix it up a little bit, don't they? It gives a different angle, gives you a pass, but I know I still find it strange.
Could be something in that though, because I think maybe he means just the player. It was always the player standing over the ball, and quite a lot of the time the player was moving the ball across the 6-yard box with their hand.
Yeah,
and I guess if it's in the possession of the defender, that means they can't book the goalkeeper. Yeah,
I think that's exactly what they're doing. You noticed it, that Hladky was getting it and rolling it or throwing it straight to the defender. So as you rightly say, Mikey, that it was at the defender's foot rather than Hladky's foot, running the risk of getting a yellow.
Okay, judging by the comments,
I'm a quarter of the way there in my Norwich prediction, is what you're saying, Mikey.
Yeah, Leicester are 1-0 up against Norwich. Happy days. Although that sees us drop out of the top two. I think we've already covered this one from Football Head 7. Do you think Walton will come straight back in? I think McKenna appreciates Hladky's ability to break lines and start attacks. I think he does as well. I think it's Hladky's shirt to lose at the moment. But Walton is a class act, and he's one of our top earners as well, isn't he, Joe?
Yeah, I personally think Walton will come straight back in when he's fully fit. I don't envisage Walton sitting on the bench for a particularly long period.
Yeah, it does probably seems unlikely. A says Burgess is the general at the back. He organises and calls the line. He does, doesn't he? And
and what was also
there's just no reason to mix anything up at the moment, is there?
Certainly not defensively.
And I know I've just said sort of bring Walton back in for Hladky and expect it to happen. But just that defensive line, since Wolfenden and Burgess have been playing together as that those pair of centre backs, our defensive record is incredible. So you just wouldn't change it at this point because he's proving every week that he can step up to this level.
And also, he's a thinker of the game, isn't he? I think McKenna said last year, didn't he, that he was in all the meetings. He was very vocal and had his say in the team meetings, and also the PFA video that came out this week, didn't it? The guys doing their coaching badges. Yeah, he was very at the fore in that video as well. Wasn't doing one of the 10 that are doing their coaching badges.
Indeed. Just going back to Walton, do we think that we've spoken about what Hladky does really well, but Michael Warner suggests that maybe we missed Walton's height and his ability to pick the ball out of the air and be calm everything down. Hladky's done a pretty good job at coming for crosses, but he does generally punch and flap, doesn't he, a little bit? I suppose that is something that we will benefit from if and when Walton does come back into the side, isn't it?
Yeah, but as I say, it's just a lovely position to be in, isn't it? It's just forgive me, I can't think who it was saying again in the Telegram, but we've now got the goalkeeper that we thought we were buying. When Paul Cook bought Hladky in, he's now showing what we thought we were going to get in the first instance. So I say, it just takes the pressure off having to rush Walton back for any reason.
Yeah. Another question on Brandon Williams: would you keep him as a sub for left back or right back, or start him ahead of Clark or Leaf? I think it's very difficult to not start Leaf Davis when he's fit.
Yeah, I think Leaf
Clark
Davis
showed everyone.
Yeah.
Clark showed everyone how good he can be last night as well, didn't he? But Brandon Williams is going to get games though, isn't he? He's going to get a lot of games.
McKenna said in training he's been working as a right back, hasn't he? So that is, I guess, where they envisage him, because after the Davis injury, he said he's been sort of trained as a right back and now he'll come in and play left back. But I said it because at the time people were saying, well, who's this assigning to replace? And I said, well, ultimately, we've now got 3 excellent fullbacks for this level in Clark, Davis and Williams, and those 3 you're going to need that to get you through the end of the season, because the drop down sort of between Clark to Donashian, especially in a sort of all-round sense, is a big drop off, as it was from Davis down to Greg Lee, where now you've got 3 of your better players who are covering 2 positions effectively. And one of them's probably going to be unhappy most weeks, but that is how it works in the squad. And if you're winning every week and they're getting their win bonuses and potential Premier League wages next season, then they'll soon get over it.
Like us, Joe.
Absolutely, they will. Just like us. Yeah, these win bonuses are really coming in handy at the moment, aren't they, Craig? Joe, I'm going to come straight back to you here. Can you ask this question and then answer it for me, please?
The thoughts on Tawanda Chiruera moving from Ipswich to Wolves, and I think it's a sad one because he's a very, very talented young player, and I think anyone who's seen the under-21s over the years would have seen him sticking the ball in the top corner or picking out a perfect pass, as he did on his Wolves debut yesterday for the under-21s. But this move has been a long time coming, and he's. I always think I'm pretty fair with young players, probably over fair. And when people talk about players' attitudes and bits like that, I always think it's a little bit unfair. But in this case, you watch him in games and his attitude often during games would just absolutely stink, in that he would be just walking around the pitch for 5-10 minutes at a time, waiting for the ball to come to him. And then when it comes to him, he'd come alive and do something good. But you could see why the coaches were frustrated with him. But I think he checked out of Ipswich a long time ago, to be fair. So I don't want to sort of besmirch him too much. And like I say, hopefully he goes on and has a long, successful career. I'm sure we'll be covered on that side. But I think he's going to find it very difficult to flick a switch from where he's been at Ipswich to where he now is at Wolves, where it's going to need to take a real step change in his attitude with regards to and I'm only talking about in-game here. I'm not talking about training, anything like that, because I don't know and no one does. But just in-game, he's not going to be allowed to just walk around the pitch and sulk, where he was here because he was under contract. And we were hoping he'd sign a new one, and we were hoping when he did sign a new one that he would then sort of buck out of that problem that he was having here, but it hasn't happened.
That is a crazy thing to be doing at that age, to be checking out when such a crucial part of his development. But yeah, like you say, good luck to him. And if he does become the player that he thinks he will, then yeah, would be well looked after, as you say. If you've enjoyed this show, please give us a like on YouTube. Join us on the Telegram if you're not already on there. Please buy a ticket for the live show after the Preston game. I know that we've managed to extend the opening hours at BT's after the game, so you don't even have to leave Portman Road before coming to watch the live show. And speaking of live shows, there's 2 more coming your way on YouTube later this week. Rich is back alongside Seb for this week's pre-match show, looking ahead to the Blackburn game. Rich reliably informs me that he's no longer hungover from his 21st birthday celebrations at the weekend. That's on Friday at 8 p.m. And the OGs, Ben and Dave, will be doing the flagship after the Blackburn game at 8 p.m. on Sunday. They're likely to be joined by one of you two, I imagine, as well. That's Craig and Joe, not me talking to the audience. That's going to be you, Joe. Excellent. Before we go, and I'll come to the chat for this as well. This is one of the more difficult ones this season. Who was your man of the match from the Southampton game?
I'll go with Luke Wolfenden. I thought that's probably the best performance I've seen him put in a Town shirt.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Would you go along with that?
Yeah, him or his mate next to him. As I said earlier, singing the praises of Burgess. I just think he's just been so constant all year so far. But as you say, Mike, it's what a great position to be in, is that it could have been one of 7 or 8 of them, couldn't it? You know, the 2 fullbacks last night were back to their best.
Jules has gone for Clark. I think I'm inclined to agree with Jules on that one. He had such a good game up against some tricky players, and also had to do it out of position mid-game. Has gone for Hutchinson. I mean, he was the match winner, wasn't he? For goodness sake, he had a fantastic game. I think he played 80 minutes as well, didn't he? So it's not like he went off really early, unless I'm mistaken on that one. Charlie D's gone with Wolfie.
Admittedly, Hutchinson hasn't played many games, but I think you could say for Wolfie, Harry Clark, and Amari Hutchinson, it was their best performance in an Ipswich Town shirt. And I know that's
and Brandon Williams, I'd say.
Yeah, because Wolfie's played 150 games, Clark's played 25, Hutchinson's played 3, and same with Brandon Williams. But yeah, I think all 4 of those, like you say, adding in Williams there is true. That is their best performance in Ipswich Town shirt.
Excellent. And yeah, all of the other supporting cast absolutely worked their socks off. So yeah, join us again on Friday night. Looking ahead to the Blackburn game. Quite a lot of expectation on that one now. I think some of us are maybe expecting to rock up at Portman Road and have an easy win, but it's not going to be like that. That's not how the Championship is. A says it's great how many options we have for man of the match. Absolutely, it is. Yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and for those of you that have listened after the fact as well. Going to end with this lovely picture of Amari Hutchinson, especially good as it covers up Craig. But yeah, thanks everyone. I'll give you the final word, Joe. I know you're off to bed now, so let's hear it.
Well, another amazing showing from the Blue Army in the crowd as well. I thought the crowd, just the numbers on a Tuesday night and the roads back were torturous, sort of there and back. Everyone knew that. The trains were not running great, and I just thought the crowd was superb again. And you do look down at the players, looking up at the crowd, and you can see they think sort of, wow, what a following we've got. And we're doing ourselves proud as a club. The fans are doing the club proud, and the players are as well.
Brilliant. Massimo.